Time to do a little more play testing. This time we are looking at the two components of the Braunstein. Right now, one of the factions, the Vikings, which have two potential options. Yes, the pointer is back. A or B. In this case, I rolled and it was an A, so that's going to be quite challenging for them. Let's go through the order of battle over here. So the Vikings have orders to basically wreak havoc in this territory. They have come upon a bridge. They had to land their... I'm making this up. This was not part of the scenario, but this explains the terrain layout. I randomized 4 pieces of the terrain on this battle board, and what we got is a hill in the middle, some woods over there to the left. Back there is a bog, and then it turned out that I rolled a bridge and crossroad, or a bridge and a road. So the road runs across the entire length of the battlefield. The waterway goes, I'm going to call this north-south. The Vikings could not get their longship under the bridge, so they've chosen the portage. But unfortunately, this land is inhabited by peasants who don't take kindly to Viking invaders and actually happen to be pretty well organized under a folk hero right now. So the peasants actually have a legit military force of 18 longbowmen, which they have placed on their right or left, 10 spearmen, which they have put in the middle, and 12 swordsmen, which they have put on our right. The swordsmen are going to be accompanied by the faction leader in the middle there. And then they also have 2 carts that they kind of have to keep track of as the baggage. Now, what is the order of battle for the Vikings? Not only did they have a longship, but they had a siege engine, which I'm going to put in the prow of the longship and angle it such that they cover the entire shoreline and then out to 45 degrees. They have deployed, all the deployments were randomized, by the way. They have chosen to deploy near the longship, and they have their 6 spearmen on the right. In the middle, they have their 6 horsemen. On the left, they have these 4 bowmen, not longbowmen, bowmen. And then they have 2 knights, and the faction leader is going to accompany the knights. This could be any scale you like. This could be 20-1, 10-1. Doesn't matter. It's very abstract when it comes to this early stuff. So the Braunstein and the simple mass combat rules that I created to go along with it are very loosey-goosey when it comes to scale, when it comes to, well, scale in terms of time, how many minutes are spent per turn. That's very abstract. Same thing with what the units actually represent. Okay, moving on, we have the simple mass combat system, which did not account for where deployment is, so that will be one correction. I'm going to say 6 inches from whatever base edge you are put on. And then there is a procedure inside the Midwest Fantasy Wargame, the Primeval RPG. It includes Arneson's, Bannockburn, Scotland, terrain stuff. But for tonight, I just wanted to test the very basic mechanics, so keeping a very simple battlefield. And nobody's going to be doing a river crossing, even though I think I've got rules in there that I adapted from Totten. Okay, which I had to do when I was playing Strategos Basic. So I got to copy paste and do some minor modification. Okay, this combat system is very simple. It relies on D12. It's basically a cross-reference of the defensive value and attack values of these troop types. Peasants roll D12 but subtract 1. Anybody that's attacking uphill will also subtract a 1 on that dice roll. And then, we'll see how this plays out. The turn sequence, very straightforward. Movement, bowfire, horse archers. So the horse archers do half their move, then bowfire, and then complete their movement. Siege weapon, or magic if that's used, or magic. One-on-one challenges, which there could be with the faction leaders. And then melees, and then administration, which is morale checks and prisoners. Vikings have a nice little morale bump. I won't, it's a spoiler, so I won't tell you what it is, but suffice to say that Vikings in combat are going to be hard to break. Okay, we're in the middle of turn 1. Here's the playing card that denotes what turn we're on. It's an ace. The Vikings, they have chosen to use this hill as a shield. So the way these rules work is you can either move or fire as a bowman. And so those bowmen have taken themselves out by moving. Same thing, his bowmen have too. They're angling to get on the right side. They don't want to be anywhere near these guys because these guys are longbows and have a range 21. These guys only have 15, so they're going to the right. Same thing, he's charged up his medium horse and his heavy horse to try and get control of the military, get control of the crest of the hill, which will force them to be at a -1 on rolls to displace him up there. He pushed his spearmen straight forward. Again, that hill is going to shield him from any bow fire. Again, that was a modification to the rules I found out that I need to make. So we're in the artillery phase. The way this works is artillery picks out a person to aim at within 30 inches, and that green pipe cleaner up there represents kind of the limit. It should be curving around, but it's bent back to its original shape. But basically that firing arc, these guys are well within it now. He has chosen to fire at basically the leader, which required another modification of the rules. Leader can't be killed by artillery fire in the first turn. That would be completely silly. But you roll 2 dice, and then you take the higher of the 2. But I just rolled double 6s, so it's going to be 6 figures removed. You remove the figure in the front that was aimed at. You can remove figures directly behind or within 2 inches right and left. So I'm going to remove 6 figures from the, looks like they're swordsmen over there. The leader will not be affected by that artillery fire. So I removed the 6 figures. And because they only had 6 regular figures plus the leader, they only had 6 figures. So we don't have any additional siege weapon fire, no one-on-one challenges from the faction leaders, no melee, administration morale check. So morale check is, again, very straightforward here. Let me find the right page. Morale check. 2 conditions. So if half the faction's men have been killed by any cause, or some portion of the faction's men are outnumbered 2-to-1 at the end of a turn of melee. So we're not in a 2-to-1 situation. Half of the faction's men have been killed by any cause. Yeah, we don't need to. It's an interesting thing. I've made it such that it's a unit, but this looks like it's saying the entire faction. So that will be a minor correction. But yeah, half of that unit just got wiped out by artillery fire. That is going to require a morale check. These are loyal peasants. Well, actually, they're disloyal peasants in this case. So rebellious peasants. These are the ones led by the folk heroes. So 4 or below fails. So they must roll 1d6, and if they don't get a 5 or a 6, that unit is going off the battlefield. They stay. Sturdy peasantry. Interesting maneuver developments during turn 2. The archers over here chose to remain stationary. The problem is that they can't fire. They can't do what's called pass-through fire in chainmail because this is a little bit more simple. So bowfire, even though they might have been able to shoot had we had a pass-through rule, there is no such thing. So bowfire cannot be done because these guys are in melee now, and bowfire cannot be done into a melee. The next thing to consider here, siege weapons. So the siege weapon is blocked by the maneuvering. Everything on the enemy side is screened either by the hill or by friendly units, and therefore no artillery fire is going to take place. The enemy has chosen to tuck his carts up here behind his bowmen. Bowmen, if they enter a wood line, they, against enemy bowmen, are treated as armored, which could give them a slight advantage. Also, the wood line, again, it's better for them to be shooting out of the wood line than it is for anything else. Plus, they can continue to threaten to come down here on the road and then march up on the longship and set it aflame. So that was their move. Let's take a look at what's happening up here. So these are the bowmen for the armored bowmen for the Vikings have come up here on the right flank. Here are the spearmen for the Vikings. Here are the spearmen for the peasantry. And then it's the peasant swordsmen that are in full contact now. I had to move up, a couple inches at a time to make sure that we hit a contact line that was fair. but the horseman got to the crest of the hill first and stayed there to await the melee to come. Both of them have a leader within 3 inches of each other. And if we look at the turn sequence, one-on-one challenges come before melee. So let's look at one-on-one challenges. So one-on-one challenges, that's where the faction leaders, treated as a heroic figure, can engage in one-on-one combat with a rival faction leader. Challenge must be made when the figures representing the faction leaders are within 3 inches of each other. Should a faction leader decline the challenges, troops decline in loyalty by 1 point. This has to do with the Braunstein, and then that has to do with Braunstein. While the challenge is ongoing, no troops from either faction may act. So both factions roll 2d6. It's possible for both of them to die. This is very much like chainmail. So let's see what happens. We're going to roll 2d6 for both faction leaders. The dark dice represent the Vikings. Ooh, 6. That's a miss, by the way. The white dice represent the peasant faction leader. 6, tie. Uh-oh, we got a problem. We got an exciting situation here. A score of 6 or less is a miss. If one combat continues the next turn, if both miss, troops cannot act. So actually, we're flipping to turn 3. No troops can act. I'm glad this came up. So basically, this is like a real heroic combat. Everybody's just standing in awe while this is going on, and only an absolute cur or yellow belly would do something to shake things up. All right, here we are. Turn 3, skipping all the way down. So no maneuver during turn 3. The only thing that can happen is melee if this, depending on how this shakes out. Okay, so Vikings and peasantry. Vikings get a 6 again. Oh, peasantry gets a 7. Peasantry gets a 7. Should I deduct 1 for the faction leader? No, he's a hero. So I'm not going to deduct 1 off of his roll. 7. A score of 7 drives the opponent away 12 inches. Honor is satisfied, and one-on-one combat ends. So in this case, the enemy hero, the Viking hero, has to withdraw 12 inches, which means the real penalty here is that he can't easily get back in range for a heroic challenge because he is pushed off of that hill and he would have to climb back up it. So yeah, that's the end of the heroic combat. Let me see how melee goes. Just a sec. All right, melee. First step is to decide who strikes first. That person is the attacker. Give priority to figure on higher ground. So it's going to be the horsemen for the Vikings that got there first, both the heavy and medium horsemen. And then again, spearmen come next, but it's not spearmen that's in contact. The peasantry sent up its swordsmen, and then horsemen again. So there's no doubt about it. The first blow is being struck by the Vikings. After the first blows are struck, the defender fills any gaps and makes his counter blows. Defender may take a free move to reposition any troop within 3 inches of the melee, 6 inches if the troop did not move during the turn. Well, interestingly enough, because we're now in turn 3, that is true. Nobody has moved this turn because of the way that heroic combat shook out. So, interestingly enough, yeah, he'll be able to reposition all of those spearmen and get them into the melee after the first blow is struck.